Hi, welcome to the fourth episode of the Armchair League. I'm Novasight,
And I'm AspariOne.
and this week's episode will be more thematic than our usual ones. It's going to be more jungling focused, as Aspari picked out the topics this week.
Yeah, I thought it would be better to, well, at least for this, a couple episodes to kind of gear towards specific things. We'll have the basics or what I imagine we'll have set up is one for jungling like it is now. The next one I pick out myself will probably be geared towards ADC, seeing as I'm the most prominent in that one. Then we might go towards top lane as well as supporting and all that, just as the basic rundown of each. Probably won't be a specific thing consistently, seeing as there's not enough topics to really hold ourselves towards that, rather. But we'll have a couple episodes that will be like this one. I hope, anyway.
Yeah, so our topics for this week are jungling as the mechanical topic, and behavior, it's Minion tax etiquette. The community topic is about Thoorin. Everybody knows about Thoorin, I think. And the game itself, seasonal upgrade progression. Might explain what that means, Sven?
That one, my thought process is towards how has the game changed since Season 1 through to Season 2, and then now into Season 4, and we're almost into Season 5. What specifically has changed?
Oh god, lots of things have changed.
Yeah, which is a nice wide topic to talk about.
And then the last thing is jungle champions in the meta. So, our first topic is jungling.
hmm
So,
So for jungling, as I said before, I'm going to basically go down the basic rundowns of everything here, but jungling, in a sense, there's one thing to consider is that it's easy to pick up, like it's not that complicated, but at the same time it's hard to master. It's one of those roles that are rather difficult to be like the best at. And it's kind of funny to put it that way because it seems a little daunting at first because you don't really know what you're doing. But once you get into the jungle position and you're comfortable in there, everything kind of makes sense. But once you start figuring out all the intricate mechanics and such as that, that's where the real skill comes from. And to basically start off the jungling aspect itself, I'll be talking about jungle camps. And now jungle camps are the absolute most basic thing that you can go over when it comes to jungling. Jungle camps are, for example, well, we like to call them whiteys, the white wraith. Then there is the wolves. There is the wraiths, the big wraith with the three little ones. There is the two golems. Then there are the buff camps, which are the red buff and blue buff. Now the first three that I mentioned earlier don't really have anything special to them. They give you experience points and gold as it would be typically. But the other buff camps, those give you bonuses to them. So you get, if you get red camp, then you will end up getting a red buff. And red buff is very nice when it comes to jungling, especially in the next segment that I'll be pushing it into. And you'll see in a sec, but red buff is very, very nice because it applies a slowing effect as well as a damage over time effect for, I think it was about 2 seconds or so. Yeah. And every time you auto-attack them, the stack on it resets, so it's nice. You can have that consistent damage over time as well as slowing. So that helps you do more damage in ganks as well as help maintain their CC. And then the second one would be blue buff. That one's geared towards mana consumption as well as ability power and cooldowns. So blue buff gives you heightened mana regen, which is very nice for you AP junglers out there. It also actually helps with energy too, energy regen, which I only learned about this one recently. I wasn't up to date on that one. Corey had to tell me about, or Nova, sorry, had to tell me about that one. But if you are a energy jungler, which I don't really think there's many out there, well, jungle Akali is kind of a thing, not really.
If you take an energy champion to the jungle like Zed, Shen, Akali, Kennen, then you could benefit from the blue buff.
And it also gives you an increase of ability power, so that's nice. You get
No,
or wait, no. Never mind. I thought it was
Baron.
Oh wait, yeah, no. I think that was an old mechanic actually that they had on it. Didn't it increase your ability power by like 10 or 5 or something like that a long time ago?
I don't think so. I don't remember that ever having that buff to it.
Okay. Never mind me. I'm like dumb. So it gives you cooldown reduction as well as mana regen, which is very, very nice when it comes to getting your skills off faster as well as maintaining using your skills and abilities. So it's very nice when it comes to ganking. And anything to add there?
Yeah, so for those who might be really new to the game and don't understand what jungling even is in the first place, where it differs from going down a lane and just fighting, there's these paths through this foresty area of the map, and you can see various monsters through it, and that's basically your job as a jungler to farm those up and then provide some kind of map presence for everyone else to just like show up in everyone else's lane and accomplish something, or to control the map in other ways by taking objectives or just making sure the enemy jungler can't accomplish as much. And jungling generally has a certain path you do things. So usually you'd start out at one of the major buffs, and then you would kill some other camps and then get to the other buff, or you'd go from one buff to the next, and then I don't know, it all depends on who you're playing pretty much.
Mm-hmm. As well as what's happening. That's more into intricate responses and such. Actually, that's part of a segment towards this jungling mechanic that I'm going to go over in a sec. But the aspects of jungling, it's not too difficult once you start to kind of understand where everything is and what to do with it. And each path you'll find out, or in time you'll find out like the proper paths to take for getting towards your camps and such. Like it's not that crazy and intricate when it comes to trying to find the right path just to get to like wraiths, for example, when you're from golems. But you'll figure it out eventually when it comes to that. And that's I'm speaking more so towards the people who are like absolutely new to jungling. Like the ones who have been jungling for a little while and just looking for pointers and such. Don't think it really applies to you that much, but yeah, anybody's able to get what they need from this is definitely useful.
Yeah, so there's different ways to jungle. Basically, there's control, there's more kill focused, and there's more objective focused. And that usually depends on the player themselves, what they want to accomplish. And some champions that they use will do it better than others. So, for example, a kill jungler would be someone like Pantheon. If you were jungling as Pantheon, you would try and hit the lanes as fast and as hard as possible and try and kill enemy laners. And then control junglers would be more like, I would say somebody tanky like Sejuani or Amumu, who wants to basically show up and contribute to something major, as maybe a response to the enemy jungler, or just stuff going on map in general. And then there's objective focused junglers, ones who basically want to power farm, want to split push, and want to kill objectives like Dragon and Baron as soon as possible. That would be champions like Warwick and Udyr.
And occasionally Yi. Those ones, Yi is kind of a weird pick when it comes to that. He's pretty utility early game when it comes to objectives.
Yep. So yeah, for people who might be new to jungling and want to try it out, just to find a style that fits you, just try out whatever champions you want in the jungle, really. If you're playing a normal game, it doesn't really matter as long as you learn about it and then see what works for you. Like for me, for example, I like playing controlled jungles. So I play, I play Xin Zhao usually, and basically every time the enemy jungler shows up somewhere, I'm right there, ready to fight him, ready to counter gank, ready to be in his face, and I'll try and go off and steal his buffs and just prevent him from even accomplishing anything in the game. And my style works a bit better when the lanes are doing decently, at least, because there's absolutely no jungler interference from either side if I'm doing my job correctly. And then as long as the lanes are doing good, it generally goes in our favor. Now, if the lanes aren't doing so well, a kill style jungler might be more effective, so someone who ganks heavily, but that doesn't fit my style in particular. And
Nice.
I can also do objective focused, like I can play Warwick and Udyr pretty decently, but I don't really like that style of play. I don't really like the whole power farming aspect.
So it all depends on your play style and what kind of setup you're wanting to achieve. Everybody's got a different style that they kind of mesh into. It just depends on your own behaviors and what have you. Then eventually you'll start picking up champions that mirror that specific style. Then once you do that, things will get a lot more effective for you. But onto jungling when it comes to ganking. Ganking is one of the more beneficial, but also can be detrimental depending on how it's carried out. The active ganking is basically coming out of your jungle and going to a lane you're specifically selecting in order to try and make a 3v2 or a 2v1 kind of setup against the enemy lane in order to achieve a kill. So when you end up ganking a lane, you can either, depending how it goes, you could either force them out of lane, you could gain a kill, or if something screws up, you could actually have an ally killed, or yourself killed, or like an entire ace of the team, depending on, or not ace of the team, ace of the gank. So, for example, bot lane, the ADC chews through everybody and then he gets 3 kills. That kind of scenario is very much possible when it comes to ganking. It gets rather difficult sometimes. But basically, when you set up for a gank, you go and try and organize with the lane that you're ganking for a little bit. Let them know that you're going in there, and then you just basically pick a path. You find a good moment to move in, and then you initiate a fight. And it can have any of those outcomes that I just previously said. And it could either be beneficial for you, you could get some kills off of it. Hell, even some people get fed off of doing that, like, as Corey said, Amumu, or even assassin junglers or such. You're able to take care of stuff like that, and then get yourself fed, as well as whatever lane that you ganked for will also get rolling, because they'll either get an assist, or if you help them out, they'll get a kill, and then you get the assist. So it's definitely beneficial, but it can also be a detriment, so it's a double-edged sword. But when it comes to ganking, there's the saying, as it always goes, don't die. So that being said, if something's happening where you are all low, or you and your allies are low, and you basically push them under the tower, their tower, then unless you are very much confident in diving them and you have enough of a mechanical ability to do it, and you know you can do it, then by all means go for it if you can pull it off. But that is also very, very difficult to pull off sometimes, especially when you have certain supports or whatever, or certain champions that you just can't dive. And that's where the sense of understanding what the champions do come into play. That's more understanding champions in general. But ganking in itself, definitely rewarding, but also can have a very, very much of a burden on your team if it goes wrong. Very, very wrong.
Alright, on the whole idea of ganking, if you really want a successful gank, you gotta factor in a few things. Like, is the lane pushed up in your team's favor or their team's favor? How the number of minions look, how much mana the enemy has. Stuff like that can all affect the outcome of a gank. Because if you're, for example, ganking a lane where the AD carry has maybe 200 mana and the support has 0, it's likely you're going to get a kill or blow someone's flash because they don't have all their abilities usable. So that's a good gank. And even if you don't get a kill, if you can blow a summoner spell, that's still good for your teammates. Whereas if your teammates are low and you have to show up to the lane and you don't accomplish anything, well, that's too bad. Because you weren't looking at the big picture. And other things, just like if I can show up to a lane and even, I don't know, push someone away without even blowing summoner spells, or just at least bring a little bit of relief to the lane, that's not too bad of a deal. Now, as someone who prefers to play lanes, because jungling is one of the roles I don't like playing that much, nothing rustles my jimmies more than when my opponent is low and pushed up and has no ward, and the jungler never comes up. Like, it's the easiest free kill in the world, and they don't even bother to consider it. And, like, I guess it'd be good to call them there, but that doesn't always work out that way because they'll be like, I'm coming, and then they'll show up 10 minutes too late. Whereas they should, if you're playing jungle, you should constantly be looking around while you're killing camps, like looking at the lanes and seeing whether or not there's a advantage for you in whatever lane. You gotta look for that low mana, you gotta look for how the lanes are pushed. You gotta kind of think about where the enemy jungler might be as well. And
You also kind of
oh, no, you
just
go on.
just to kind of add into this. You also have to kind of, this is more of an analytical aspect, but you also have to pay attention to their behavior. So if you're kind of looking, okay, this is basically the scenario. You're up in top lane. The enemy laner is pushed up to your ally's tower. So you're on, like it's blue side, yeah. Your allies are on blue side, you are on blue side, your enemy laner is pushed up to your tower and he's got low health. But your ally is also rather low health as well. And you go into the bush to kind of wait for a sec just so your ally can kind of get an idea of what's going to happen so he can position himself for it. Maybe just save a little bit of mana so he can go in on that. But then the enemy laner kind of backs up a bit. Not entirely, but he backs up and he maintains his distance from your ally, and he keeps himself around the creeps, though. Just enough distance that you can't exactly get to him, but just enough that he's able to maintain CSing as well as keep himself from any immediate harm. So you kind of look at that and you go, well, okay, he changed his behavior. He wasn't so pushy till you ran into lane. Now that you, or not into lane, you ran into that bush. So now you're in that bush and you're sitting there and waiting for him, and he's kind of running around back and forth, maintaining his distance from you, maintaining his distance from the tower, and maintaining his distance from your ally, but he's continuing to CS and gaining health regen and what have you. Now, I see some people, they notice that behavior, and they sit there and they kind of wait. And it's kind of funny because it's just right out there what he's doing. And he's basically seeing that you're there because that bush is warded. He notices you're sitting there, and he's trying to waste your time, basically. So you sit there waiting for him to make a move to slip up, and he's not going to. He's going to keep CSing, and he's going to keep doing that. And the second you run out of that bush or make a move towards him, he's probably going to flash away or use whatever escapes he's got to get out of there. So in general, that kind of behavior is a tactic to kind of play on the mind of the jungler just to see if they can mess with him. But that objective is basically to get you to waste your time. And if you see that behavior up, usually the best aspect would be to drop a pink or use a sweeper or something and get rid of that ward. Because most likely that ward is there for seeing that, or there was a ward somewhere around there that's not specifically in that bush, but it was around the bush, so he was able to see you actually move into it. He doesn't know whereabouts you are exactly in the bush, but he would understand that you are there and you are intending to gank. So that's being said, you kind of got to watch and understand what they're doing. And that's where opportunities arise, but yeah, definitely keep an eye on what the enemy laner is doing when you're initiating a gank.
Yeah, and also, if he is seemingly wasting your time, you also got to think that perhaps enemy jungler will be approaching soon too.
Yeah.
And if he makes it a 2v2, it's not going to work out nearly as well. It probably won't even work out at all. Because if the enemy laner already has the advantage over your laner, and then you have a jungler that might be even with you in particular, it's still an advantage for them because you still have a weak laner and they don't. So I try and kind of I don't try like float around too long when I know their behavior's changed. So I tend to maybe wait 10 to 15 seconds to see if something's changed. And if not, I'll go and if I can sweep, I'll sweep. If I can't, I'll go find something else to do where I'm still effective on the map. But to wait there for a minute or longer is just a complete waste of time and could lead to something worse.
Yeah. And that's actually a lead into the next segment that we're talking about here, which would be counter ganking. Now, counter ganking is exactly as Nova was saying. It's an opportunity to take out the enemy jungler or send them back or what have you. And it's basically a reaction to what the enemy or what your enemy jungler is doing. So your enemy jungler is trying to gank a lane or whatever. You see them, for example, in that bush, and you see them waiting there. Well, it's a good opportunity to kind of run in and do whatever. Your laner has the opportunity of actually getting a kill off of that. So then you, in general, try and meet that jungler and either prevent him from successfully ganking or get a kill off of it. And that would be the objective of counter ganking. That can also go wrong too, but it's not as bad as it would be ganking in itself. The initial act of ganking is far more of a double-edged blade than counter ganking is, because there's always an advantage to counter ganking. And some may not see it that way, but it definitely is that way. Especially when something may happen where there's a couple kills. If you deny them from that gank happening and you basically reset the lane, then that means that you prevented the gank from happening, you prevented your teammates from dying, you prevented any assists from being had, if it all went well, of course, and you prevented any kill scores. So essentially you made that enemy jungler waste his time, which is very much a detriment to the enemy jungler because their time is very precious. And that's something that not a lot of people understand, is when a jungler is initiating some stuff and when they're trying to gank lanes, they're basically going out of their way to stop CSing to go into your lane and to try and gank for you while the clock is ticking away, when they could be getting more CS and more experience and keep their level up or get their stacks. And if you can prevent the enemy jungler from making use of that, then you by far put him behind, even slightly. But even if it's slightly, but you still manage to put them behind. And every little bit actually counts. So counter ganking is very much helpful to the team, but it's also an art that's kind of difficult to pick up unless you got the map like extremely warded or just so happen to be in the right place at the right time. Counter ganking is very nice on that, unless you start picking up the habits of like mirroring the enemy jungler or predicting where they're going to be, or you see a queue happening where a lane's pushed up or whatever, and then you don't see the jungler anywhere on the map, or they haven't ganked recently, and it's like, oh, they could be coming down here, or could be going up there. Then you would start doing a camp that's closest to it, or what have you. And if he shows himself, then you can answer. But that's strategy and tactics, and that's not something I'm going to get directly into. I'll kind of only briefly push on that, as I've been doing up until now, and will continue to do.
Okay, so, and strategy and tactics is something I would talk about regarding dealing with an enemy jungler. So, like I said before, I like to play a very controlled jungle style. So, I like to show up for counter ganks. I like to basically have some sort of idea where the enemy jungler is at all times. And I have a pretty decent idea of where they are, and even without wards some of the time, because you have to, when you play against them enough, you kind of know where they start and how fast they clear certain parts of the jungle. So that said, if I can mirror them, then I would be able to show up and counter gank them at any given time. However, if they show up somewhere unexpected, as someone who likes to play control style, I can still do something reactive to that, whether it be going into their side of the jungle and stealing some camps, and perhaps dropping a ward for the other side of the map. So I'll be slowing them down between their moves, and then I'll be able to keep better track of them. So, for example, I like to, like when I see them gank, sometimes I'll go to one of their major buffs, like red and blue, and I'll throw a ward in a spot where I can see it, and whether or not it's spawned yet, doesn't matter, because it will show up on the mini-map when it does spawn. So, the moment it spawns, I'll be able to go there, and either I'm going to take it, or I'm going to meet them there, depending on how fast they know how to respond to their own buffs being up. And most junglers in lower tier aren't very reactive to their own buffs, so they'll wait like minutes upon minutes before even touching the damn thing, which gives me plenty of time to steal it from them. And for the junglers that, like me personally, I like to keep good track of my buffs and when they're going to be up, so I'll be able to get to them as soon as possible. And so that's how I maintain my style of play. And that's how the control style generally works.
Yeah, so it's useful on that aspect. Understanding what you're doing and how you're doing it, little tidbits here and there that help you keep your effectiveness in jungle definitely helps, especially the strategies that are involved. There's a lot more crazy, intricate strategies, situational or not, to jungling that you may pick up on your own or we may go over in another episode, but mostly we're just going to cover the basics of jungling in it as. But as far as counter ganking and counter jungling, we kind of brushed up on there too, a little bit. You get the idea of what counter jungling is from counter ganking, it's similar. But we'll go into ownership and ownership of your jungle. Now, this aspect of what's considered ownership, and kind of wonder, well, what does he mean by ownership? I mean, literally your jungle, your territory. So everything that's in your jungle, as a jungler, belongs to you, and it's your decision on what you do with it. Now, some people out there figure they are entitled to certain things in your jungle. Like, for example, mid laner getting blue buff, that's like a big one. In general, you're gifting the mid laner a blue buff. They are not entitled to it. Especially if you're needing it in order to maintain ganks and maintain pressure on the map, by all means take it. It is not theirs to have. But if you can help out your mid lane by giving them blue buff, and if you don't need it, then that'll definitely help them maintain so they can keep up the pressure on their own. So there's little bits and decisions that you can make that will either help or hinder you. And that's applying to blue buff as well as red buff. Like if your top laner is an AD heavy champion, red buff might help, or more importantly, AD carry. Not many people I see do this, where they get the AD carry to go and take red buff. I've seen it happen a couple times, but usually I try and do that whenever I can get around to it. But if the AD carry has red buff, for example, well, that's very nice because of the slowing aspect and then the damage over time in case he's trying to harass the enemy AD carry or the enemy support. Like it's very nice on that. Or you can take it yourself and you can use it for ganking potential and such. But what your jungle in itself is, as I said, yours. That's your lane, that's your role. Much like you wouldn't want the mid laner coming down to bot lane to start clearing your minion waves, you wouldn't want like the entire team of yours to start clearing your jungle. Now it helps if they're behind. That's definitely useful, especially like the top lane. If they're getting pushed in, they can take wraiths or not wraiths. If you're on like blue side, they can take Whitey, or they can take Wolf Camp or what have you, just so they can maintain while you keep your pressure bottom. And some will understand how the camps work. Some are junglers themselves, so when they take a lane, they see you're down there, so they'll take white. Then once you come back to get white, it'll already be up. Stuff like that. But in general, yeah, as I said, the jungle in itself belongs to you, and those buffs specifically are yours to deal with. So you can give them out or you can keep them to yourself, and they are useful in whatever aspect that you want to maintain on the map. It's towards your decision and your understanding. Now, some other players may know better. They may understand what's going on, especially when you're in like the higher tiers or something, or if you're playing against, or for example, if you're playing in like blind pick or something, and like you got a platinum mid laner or something, and they have better understanding of what's happening in the match, and they recommend taking blue buff so they can maintain and keep the kills up, and you're kind of sitting there going, well, I don't know. I generally go with their decision, considering they've just been with it longer. They understand the match or what's going on. Not all of them. Some of them are kind of They don't really understand what's going on. That's kind of just what happened, but it depends on their behavior, and if you get the feeling that they know what they're doing, then yeah, let them have blue buff and then see where it goes with it. But in general, yeah, don't let anybody pressure you figuring that they are entitled to anything within your jungle, because it is your jungle.
Alright, and now the third type of jungler is the objective jungler, which, like I said, would be champions like Warwick and Nudir. These are the junglers who like to just farm and farm and farm, and they have some kind of, they have something to them where they can be useful, but they need pretty much everything. However, they also have the best way of taking major objectives like Dragon and Baron. Like, they can just clear them faster than most. They can do it by themselves sufficiently, and that style of jungling is really good for a team that can go even or win most of their lanes. So, in order for that to work, obviously you need some kind of item setup where you can just solo Dragon, and you can do it early enough where there's no wards there yet, and just pretty much take it right from under their nose.
Yeah. It's the different styles. Depending on what you like to play, you'll figure it out eventually what kind of style you like to play, but everything's got its ups and downs to it. Like you'll have one aspect where it's very beneficial to play in that play style, but it's kind of like the triangle to it. So you get one style that's better than the other, or not better, but able to counteract the other one, but then another play style, or the third prong of that play style ends up being counteractive to the one that counteracts yours. Like it kind of goes in a circle like that. There's ways to circumvent that by understanding what to do and where to be, but for the most part, yeah. Once you figure it out, you'll definitely have more of an understanding of what to do, specifically for your playstyle.
Okay, so we'll move on to the next topic now, which is still fitting the jungle theme, obviously. Minion tax etiquette. So you can start off with this.
All right. So for Minion tax etiquette, that's another kind of mechanic, or sort of. It's I more so see it as a behavior, but on the aspect, just like how we started out the jungling, what is minion tax etiquette? What is minion tax? Well, minion tax is basically whenever you end up ganking for a lane, the way to circumvent your time being wasted to a degree would be minion taxing. That's when you take a couple minions from the lane, not the whole wave, a couple minions, just for your time wasted, or if you're able to shove them out of the lane or something, no kill came out of it. You just take a couple minions, then you're on your way. And it's to help circumvent the time wasted, as I said, because you may end up be sitting there. Some junglers I notice, especially in the LCS too, there's some junglers that like, kind of wait and sit and bide their time and wait for a good moment, then they initiate the gank. And minion tax definitely helps in that, because if you push them out of the lane or something, or if you even get the kill, depending on how much time you've been sitting there waiting for them, minion tax helps circumvent any time wasted. Because you get a little bit of CS and a little bit of XP off of it, and any minions that are dying around those minions that you're taxing from, you also get a little experience from that, so you get some ambient experience. But, yeah, minion tax is just entirely a method of circumventing any time wasted to a degree. It won't cover everything, but it'll cover at least a quarter to a half of what it was. Maybe a little bit more than that, actually. But there comes the aspect of when to tax. Now, as I said earlier, it's basically whenever you try and gank or initiate something in a lane, you send them back or you get a gank, depending on how much time it is. You just take a couple minions, and yeah, it should be good. Most laners understand what minion tax is. Most of them don't mind just a couple minions. But in the aspect of when not to tax, that's like whenever whenever there's a large wave or something like that, and you see the top laner isn't really CSing that much, they keep fighting too much or something, and then I've seen this happen before where somebody would just go up to top and be like, well, might as well utilize this. So they go and they basically take the wave from them. And I've seen that happen a couple times, and that's not a good time when to tax, because those minions could help that laner, especially if they got aggro on them or something. The minions will turn around and start attacking. Or sometimes it'll help if they need help shoving those minions off, but you don't want to tax for no reason whatsoever, because that's in general bad manners. Just like to run into lane, take a couple minions, and then run out. Many people get angry at you for that, because there's basically no reason why you did that. Unless you were trying to push a lane, for example. Like I've seen this happen a couple times where they're shoved, or the enemy laners are shoved out of the lane or something like that, and they're forced to go back. Then you start clearing the CS, and then you push up into the tower and try and take the tower. That makes sense, but when you end up just clearing the entire wave, then you just go off back into your jungle, the laner is just going to sit there and go, yeah, okay, that was a bad-mannered move. But the point of taxing, as I said, is just to maintain any losses, essentially.
Yeah, so if I'm playing a lane, and it's just like, whatever, not much is going on. Then enemy jungler goes back or something, and I see you, the jungler, walk up to the lane, kill a couple minions for absolutely no reason whatsoever. You didn't accomplish any damn thing because the enemy opponent, like the enemy wasn't even there. Then I don't understand what the hell you're doing, because that doesn't make any sense whatsoever. And all you did is basically give me slightly less XP and gold, and that could be the little bit I needed. So, just don't do that.
One thing that is alright when it comes to the minion taxing, though, I personally don't mind this, especially when I'm in a certain lane or what have you. If you get shoved out of lane, for example, like your mid lane, this happens every now and then. The enemy mid laner just shoves the laner out of lane, and you notice there's a big wave coming to the tower. They can't get to it. They have no means of taking that CS. And if you need to, you can babysit that tower and then clear that wave, make sure it doesn't, the wave doesn't damage the tower too much. Then it's shoved back into the lane. But you don't keep pushing out into the lane and then taking wave after wave, because then your minions will just get shoved into the tower, and then the enemy mid laner, they either attempt to attack you or what have you, or they will get back into lane if they had to back, and then they get free CS, whereas your mid laner is going to sit there and go, well, what the hell? You took every single wave of mine, and now I'm at a detriment, and now I have to be careful because the enemy jungler could pop in, or for example, if it's Zed, he could just jump on your face and then start blasting you because you're all the way up, or they're all the way up to the tower. So it's like, yeah, for the most part, you can clear waves. It's a good habit to do when it comes to protecting towers, but don't take it into yourself to say, okay, well, everything of this is mine. And I've seen it happen a couple times where some people get angry or whatever, they start going on tilt, and some people, well, geez, I've seen this a couple times actually. Somebody gets salty or whatever, and then like scenario, the top laner is arguing with the jungler or something, and the top laner is doing horribly because he's arguing with the top laner. So the top laner takes it into him, or the jungler takes it into themselves to go, okay, well, you're not going to utilize this CS, I better take it. So then they start clearing all the CS or whatever, and then it's more rabble back and forth, and leads to AFKs and feeding and the team being behind. But yeah, for the most part, it's just trying to understand the cues, and once you figure your stuff out, then everything should be good.
Yeah, so basically, pay your damn taxes.
Yeah.
Okay. Anything else for that one?
No, as far as it goes, I covered everything on that.
Alright, so our next topic is the community topic, which is about Thoorin. Now, if you don't know who Thoorin is, he's basically this, what is it, an esports interviewer. He has a couple different little shows where he basically talks to famous players and whatnot and discuss the state of the game and, you know, the esports scene in general. Now, he's pretty controversial because he's very, his way of speaking to people or about other players is very heavy for the most part. He's a very raw person. So, anyways, it's usually taken the wrong way because sometimes he goes overboard and says something just completely out of line, and it really bothers people, and it's caused more than a few problems for him.
Yeah, so for the most part, he seems to mean well, but he gets too battly when it comes to him and how he goes about his stuff, which actually recently lost his job at I think it was a website he was working with.
On Gamers?
Yeah. So he ended up losing his job there because of how he was acting, I believe. Just what it all escalated to.
Well, I'm not sure if it was actually explained what happened with them. If he just decided to not, just pursue stuff independently, or if he was actually let go from On Gamers because of his attitude. or for some reason or another.
Hmm.
But he's caused some other controversies, like, for example, back when he was allowed, or he was disallowed from an esports event because he basically said something really stupid about Poland, and I can't remember for the life of me what exactly it was, but I guess it was pretty, like, it wasn't taken very well, and he ended up getting banned from an actual, like, he couldn't go to this esports event and interview people because he was outright banned from it. And that's just one example. Another one is he actually got himself and On Gamers banned from interviewing Team Solo Mid because of some comments he made about players on the team in general, and a comment he made about Reginald, but that wasn't the only reason why it happened. Is because of what he said about players in general.
Yeah. So he's definitely had a bad rap with the community, but at the same time, some community also liked his style because he was kind of right to the point and didn't filter at all. He just thought exactly what he thought, or said exactly what he thought. So I guess a lot of people respected him for that too. But since they heard about him leaving On Gamers or whatever, everybody kind of blew up, and they're just like, yeah, I think a lot of them figured he lost his job, but right now I don't even... Yeah, I'm not even sure if he lost his job or if he was let go or he quit or what have you. But yeah, his leaving of On Gamers ended up becoming definitely a stir in the community. Varying sides explaining their disdain for either outcome.
Yeah. So his major point of, like, the big thing he's known for is the show called Summoning Insight, which is where he ended up getting most of his bad rap from because of the kind of comments he directed towards certain players here and there. But it wasn't just that. His Twitter was, like, his actual Twitter account, his commentary on there also made people wary of him. But Summoning Insight, I've watched it a few times, and I mean, there's some pretty good moments in it, and he's very, like, even though he's not, like, all polite and nice about it, he's very stat oriented, so he knows that when he's talking about other players and how they're performing or how they're not performing, he actually can draw from memory all these stats because he spends time researching these players and he knows that where they stand in comparison to other players. So that kind of earned him the nickname, like, the esports historian or something like that. And I mean, he does good work regarding the whole stats deal, and that's respectable enough. But his way of going about things sometimes is a little over the top, and personally, I don't particularly care for it that much. But whatever, he does his thing, and honestly, if you don't want to hear from him, don't watch Summoning Insight, don't look at his Twitter, and just pretend he doesn't exist. And whatever makes your life easier.
Yeah, as it goes, Thoorin, I've never really watched any of his Summoning Insights. I've only seen like a couple Twitters of his recently that were kind of linked to me. That was about it. But I don't really have any gripes with him. If he's straight to the point and he says what's on his mind, I respect him for that. Even if what he says is just asinine, which in some cases I believe it may have been. But yeah, I don't mind.
Yeah, so, a little bit more on that controversy with the whole Reginald thing, and he ended up addressing this at some point or another. Basically, when he was talking, he was comparing Reginald to Caesar from Planet of the Apes. Now,
Oh my
his
god.
his explanation was because Caesar is like a leadership and father figure, like kind of like Reginald, but at the same time he chose the most like out of place, very direct or indirectly insulting thing because people always made fun of Reginald for apparently looking like an ape. So to compare him to a character from Planet of the Apes, like, and he's well aware that this was partially planned when he came up with that. Um, that was pretty stupid of him,
Oh
and
yeah.
that caused a lot of problems for on-gamers. So, yeah. But I think at that point when he said that, on-gamers was already banned from interviewing TSM because of stuff Thoorin and Monte Cristo said on Summoning Insight about their other players in general and how they were underperforming here and there in comparison to someone else.
Yeah. He's definitely had a bad rap as well as a lot of controversy. Got nothing really more I can contribute to that.
There's really not much to it. If you need to learn more about him, just look up his Twitter or look up the show Summoning Insight and just watch and learn what the show's all about. The
Yeah.
show itself's actually pretty informative, to be honest. Like, I've learned a lot about esports stuff simply from watching that show.
I'll
And
definitely be adding a link to it too,
yeah.
as well as Thorn's channel.
That being said, since he isn't part of OnGamers anymore, there hasn't been any updates to Summoning Insight or anything. But he is going to be continuing it pretty soon, independently, which means he might be more unfiltered and more in your face than before. So the community is probably going to be keeping a keen eye on him to see what he says, what he does next. And yeah, we'll see what happens with him. If he gets a job somewhere else, or he just starts his own independent thing entirely, then that's up to him.
Yeah. So at the moment, sky's the limit for him.
Yeah. That's enough about Thorn in general. Okay. The next topic is about the game itself, and its seasonal upgrade progression. So, go over a little bit of what you meant by that again.
Well, what I meant by seasonal upgrade progression is it seems like by season there seems to be a little bit or a massive upgrade to the game itself as a whole. So I don't mean like just adding skins here and there or something. I mean like the client change, the new Summoner's Rift map coming out, as well as like the very previous client change that we had, as well as the interface change. I remember that one too, where the mana and health bars weren't animated before. Like all just little intricacies and random aesthetic stuff that they've improved on, as well as changed around. And it's all been happening per season, so I think they made like one major change per season so far. And that's what I found most interesting, is how it's progressed since season 1, and now it's up to season 4, going on to season 5. And they're going to be, I think, introducing the new Summoner's Rift map at the start of the season.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's going to be at the beginning of the season 5 and all that. I don't know if it will be before the end of the year or after the end of the year, but it will be when season 5 is underway. So, regarding the seasonal upgrades of the game, well, I've been playing League of Legends since season 1, so I'm well aware that back in the day, that game looked like ass, it ran like ass, it was just mechanically ass, everything about it was ass. And no offense to Riot, but that's just how it was, because Riot was a small company back then, and I mean, they did from what little they had, they managed to create a good enough game to garner attention. So, as Riot Games grew, so did League itself, and as Riot Games added departments to their company and have like department heads and all these people working on certain aspects of the game all the time, the game got better. So, I mean, there's been graphical improvements, there's been just client improvements, just how the game runs in general is improved. The way the game plays itself has improved. And honestly, I want to do, and thinking about it, I actually wouldn't mind doing a entire segment dedicated to the changes of Summer's Rift Warriors, just like some longish, I don't know, video or a special podcast that just talks about how much Summer's Rift has changed in Season 1, because there's been hundreds upon hundreds upon hundreds of patches since the first thing. And
just tweaks and different versions of it too, like the Christmas one and the Halloween one, and yeah.
And just the way the game presented itself over the years, like the original new release champions that they had were stupidly broken, and because they were barely tested when they were released, and now they have people on the PBE, like their public beta client, that play the new updates and stuff before they come out, and they can talk about how the champions are working and the bugs and stuff, and Riot takes into account those things, and all the new release champions are a lot better than they were. Like, for example, when Xin Zhao got first released in Season 1, he was so broken that he could just pentakill a team left and right, like, without any problem whatsoever.
It was rough.
And it's not to say that the new release champions of this season are always like perfectly balanced or anything. I mean, Yasuo was pretty crazy when he was released, and he's a newer champion. But in comparison to initial release Xin Zhao, it's a whole different world.
Oh yeah, definitely much of a difference. God, I remember when Caitlyn first came out. Or not Caitlyn, Misfortune. That was ridiculous.
Yeah, champions were all sorts of crazy back then. Even some of the items that used to exist in the game were just, like, insane in comparison to the ones out now.
Oh, yeah.
Just how they worked. Like, people always were kind of disappointed about certain items getting removed from the game. Like, Innervating Locket, for example. That item used to give you mana back when you killed minions and creeps, I think.
I think the other one was Heart of Gold or something.
Yeah, Heart of Gold gave you health and gave you gold per 5 or gold per 10 or something. And it was a pretty good item for just having around to keep with when you were jungling and stuff, because you'd get extra gold. These items are considered, by today's standards, ridiculously broken. But then something from a more recent time, like Feral Flare, when that first came out, was pretty damn broken too.
Oh yeah.
So, I mean, like I said, Riot's not infallible even now, but it's a hell of a lot better than it used to be, considering just balance stuff. And yeah, like the maps changed, and old champions are getting their looks upgraded, getting their kits changed, and they're doing a lot of work to keep the game fresh and alive for years to come.
It's quite a few things, yeah. Items removal, the new skins, yeah. We're updating of them, like even like the portraits of some of the things. Like, oh god, I think it was Leopard Nidalee or something. We called her the Nope Nidalee because of how badly drawn her neck was. It looked like the engineer from that Nope.avi video.
Oh yeah, or was it one of the characters looked like they had a broken leg? in the splash art.
Yep.
Like, I don't know, some of it looked really silly.
Rough and or tough.
Little things like that, and even major things over the years have improved the game greatly. Now, the only thing that hasn't changed is the community, to be honest.
Yeah, they're still pretty much the same. It's bigger now than it used to be, by far. Like, I remember it used to be rather small. Every now and then, like, after maybe 5, 6 games or so, you'd run into at least one person that you've played maybe 13 games ago, I'd say. Or just one that you can remember just from playing with that day. It wasn't all that big of a community. Then it had its tiers that were not segmented. Like it was rather small. Now the community is bigger, but it's turned into basically a bigger form of what it already was. It hasn't changed really at all.
Yeah, and while Riot's been trying to improve behavior in the community, most of their stuff has been, I don't know, redirects of behavior issues, whereas they couldn't just completely outright deal with them. So, I mean, for a newer example, if you're chat banned, you can't play ranked anymore. But now these people are playing draft mode, and they're making that all unpleasant to play with their attitudes. And, like, their solution was decent for ranked, but it's only a redirect, because now people who only like to play draft mode are suffering instead.
Yeah, it doesn't help.
Well, that's just how I think the internet is anyways. Doesn't really matter what you do, people like to open their mouths wide and drool out of them, regardless of what measures are against them. They'll find a way to drool out of their mouths anyways.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, the game's changed a lot over the years, and I wouldn't mind doing an entire thing about just the changes, because there's so many to even list, and I can only think of some off the top of my head even.
Yeah.
It kind of just blurred together over the years since I've been playing for so long.
Took me a little bit to think of that segment, actually, just to think of what goes into it. It kind of just dawned on me. I'm like, hey, wait a minute, that's a lot of stuff. Yeah, we may end up making like an entire video about it, or an entire podcast rather about it, or just maybe like 1 or 2 segments, or part 2 or something. I don't know, but yeah, there's quite a lot.
All right, but that's enough for now about that.
Mm-hmm.
Our next topic is the meta, which is the jungle champions that are in the meta. Which ones are considered strong and for what reasons? So, I don't know, what's your opinion on what's strong right now?
Actually, when I was thinking of this segment, the ones that were strong were Elise, Lee Sin, Warwick was, still rather strong, but just like for the most part, the main ones that were played, I can't remember them all off the top of my head, actually, because I play a couple niche champions for jungle. They just seem more my style. But like the strong ones, especially Elise now, is rather nerfed. She doesn't really bring that much to the plate anymore.
Yeah, so the good picks for jungle have changed pretty handily, and what's considered strong right now are ones that can just kind of jump on people with no problem, no way of dealing with them. Champions with really good gap closers or just very quick abilities. So, I mean, what's considered strong right now are champions like Rengar and Kha'Zix.
Yeah.
They're the ones that are getting heavily played in competitive in general, and people in solo queue are actually learning that the champions that are good in solo queue are more like tankier ones that can provide utility. Now, not everybody actually realizes that. Most people just try and follow what looks good on the LCS and all that.
For the most part, when it comes to jungler champions, actually following what they do on the LCS is the only time where I think, that kind of works when it comes to junglers. No other lane do I really think that, because they tend to pick weird champions like Hecarim mid. But when it comes to the junglers, majority of the time they seem pretty solid picks. Like most well-rounded, most efficient picks that they could pick for their team. And it always seems like they pick a specific jungler that's within the meta set that revolves around the LCS champions that they can work with. So for the most part, if you're looking for what's hot and what's really up there as far as efficiency and power goes, I would recommend actually checking out the LCS champions. But jungle lane is really the only one that I would say that about. The other lanes, ADC occasionally is pretty good. Usually I would just look at most popular picks, to be honest, for that stuff. But or Korean picks specifically, because they run by numbers, very much so.
Yeah,
But
although, even though most of the LCS junglers, LCS jungle champs are optimal just for even solo queue, there are some that just work better with teams that are more organized. Like, I don't like seeing stuff like jungle fiddlesticks in that, simply because if he's good, then that's great. But most of the time, they don't use their abilities in such a way that they're working with the team to accomplish anything.
yeah, it kind of falls. That more so falls under the line of niche picks too, though. They do still pick niche picks in LCS, ones that have like high success rate if you're really good with them. Fiddlesticks, if you're good with positioning and good with cues and understanding what the enemy lane is, like that one's more psychological. When it comes to certain picks, you generally see the ones like Kha'Zix or Rengar or Lee Sin or those ones that are most actively picked are really the only ones that I would recommend. If you're newer and looking for a well-rounded champion to play.
I don't know. I just stick with Zinzao because simple. All I have to do is dash at them.
Zin's falls under one of the niche picks too, I think, doesn't he? Yeah.
He might be.
As far as I remember, yeah, he's more of a niche pick choice. But he's definitely falls under your playstyle, which helps. When it comes to champion picks in general, yeah, the solid ones are generally the most well-rounded ones. They tend to be healthy for the most part. Got quick skill abilities or whatever. They may be bursty or something. Like, I know Rengar is rather bursty, and he's good with cleanup and stuff like that. Same with Kha'Zix, he's able to take out stragglers or find people who are straying off and stuff like that. Like, it depends on your playstyle and what you're hoping to achieve. Certain champions can do different things. Like, for example, as I said, Kha'Zix is able to pick off people who are kind of just off on their own, not with their team or whatever, so you can go over and assassinate them. Or if you want another assassin champion that also... Well, Kha'Zix is also rather pretty team-oriented. He's pretty decent in a team fight, too. Rengar is not bad in a team. He tends to duck in and out, though, so yeah. For the most part, it's skills as well as understanding what to do. As far as it goes, there's also runes and masteries that you gotta keep in mind when it comes to jungling, because it's not the same as top lane and it's not the same as mid or ADC or support. Generally, runes and masteries, they revolve around the champion you're using. And for example, the champion I use most often would be Sejuani. A lot of her abilities work off of health. I'm still working on augmenting that stuff to change my runes and masteries around so I can create a page specifically for her, but she works a lot off of health as well as a little bit of ability power. So probably have some magic pen in there too or something. She does some damage over time effects, but what her W does is works off of health, your own health. So to start out with, if you have health, you got some tanky ability against the minions, as well as, or not, tankiness against the creeps, but you also got the added damage that you wouldn't have without the health runes. As far as mastery goes, typically you see a little bit in offense, a fair amount in defense, and occasionally some in utility. Depending on the champion you're playing too, though. There's a lot of little bits here and there, but normally you see a bunch of stuff plugged into your defense, your middle tree. And
Yeah.
it's got a lot of anti jungle minion stuff in it too that helps you survive as a jungler. So you definitely wouldn't want to go in there with like an 80 carry page or some crap like that, attempting to do something.
Yeah, I get what you mean there. I don't know, my jungle pages are pretty based on typical attack damage, and I don't know, I sometimes like to run move speed and stuff just so I can do my control style faster in order to keep up with people.
Mm-hmm. Well, depends on your choices and picks too, as well as the champion you're playing as well. As I said, certain champions like Shyvana, when I used to play her in jungle, usually you'd get some kind of move speed set up with her too, just to add to her W,
Yeah.
just so you can get around the map faster, or running Moby boots or something like that. Answer to lanes really quickly.
I see a lot of people run attack speed for junglers that like to farm,
Mm-hmm.
like Udirs and Yi and stuff. People running heavy attack speeds.
That's what I actually ran for Elise, is not heavy attack speed, but I put a fair amount of attack speed into her as well as ability power.
Oh yeah.
Because attack speed, it works off of her spiders. So it was nice to maintain her health regen, then a little bit of a, I think it was ability power or magic pen, I don't remember which one. I kind of just select it and go. But yeah, one of those two, and then some, I think I went armor, or is it mana regen? I don't remember. It's been a while since I actually set that up too. But yeah, for Elise, as far as it goes, or like any other champion that maintains forminess, like Yi or works off of Feral Flare stacks or something like that, it's definitely beneficial to get attack speed. Unless you're able to clear camps really fast, then that's just the case of it. If you're able to clear them, you can throw it into whatever else that you want to choose.
Yeah, so with jungle picks in general, just build it in such a way that you can use it best, honestly,
Yeah.
and find whatever suits you. I mean, everyone has to jungle eventually, especially if you're playing solo queue, you'll be put in that role at least once or twice
Oh yeah.
a week or a day, depending on how much you play. So, find something that works for you, even if you don't want to main jungle. That's about it for jungle picks. Anyways, to go over the topics again, in conclusion, our main topic and our mechanical topic was jungling, which is basically what is jungling, how it works, what type of jungling there is, being control, objective, and heavy gank type. Um, Behavior, minion tax etiquette, having to do with when you should be taking a couple of minions from your laners to make up for any detriment to yourself in waiting, or just basically tax him because you accomplished something big. Community was about Thoorin, and he's pretty controversial, but best of luck to him in whatever he chooses to do. We'll have links to him and some other stuff. The game itself, seasonal upgrade progression, we'll probably go into more detail about this eventually, but this game has changed quite a bit over the years, like crazy.
A lot, yeah.
Yeah.
You're just starting in season 4, for example, or at the end of season 3, and now we're running through season 4 and we're going into season 5 now. If you're just coming in then yeah. Even then, you're still seeing quite a few changes. But to go back from like season 1, my god.
Yeah. And the meta, what jungler champions in general, just what kind of jungle champions are good, and sometimes the ones being played in LCS are actually a decent pick even for solo queue. The way to build them, I mean, just do it to suit yourself. So that was episode 4 of the Armchair League. Once again, I'm your host Novasight,
And I'm AspariOne.
and thanks for listening.
See you later.